Patrick Cooch from the Carlton Footy Club. You're listening to the Coaches Panel.
James Walker here from the Brisbane Lions.
Jason Johannesson from the Western Bulldogs.
Luke Parker here from the Sydney Swans.
It's Rory Sloane here from the Adelaide Crows, and you're listening to the Coaches Panel.
Max Orr, Melbourne Football Club.
This is Matt Fyfe from the Fremantle Footy Club, and you're listening to the Coaches Panel.
Hey friends, it's MJ from the Coaches Panel. Round 8 of fantasy footy is just hours away, and over the past few days, plenty of big changes have hit all formats of the game. We're going to chat through all the big new issues with trades, how the formats work, everything that's happened over the past 7 days. And joining me to do so, I got Kane back on. Hello, buddy.
Hello, MJ. Good to be back. Good to have more news as ever. Every time we do these Thursday podcasts, it seems like we have a whole new stack of information to go through.
Yes, no, it's some of the advantages of getting that last-minute quick chat in before the first part of lockout hits a Thursday evening. But, you know, it's been Kane and I for the past couple of weeks, which has been great and fun. But if you're a player of Dream Team, you might have been looking through where your overall rank is, and there's a team name that might be vaguely familiar to Coaches Panel listeners. We've only got him for a short time, but the number one player in Dream Team right now joins us from the Coaches Panel. It's Rids. Hello, buddy.
G'day, mate. How you going?
I'm good. How's it feeling at the top of the tree?
MJ, I missed that introduction. Who are you introducing there?
I am introducing the current leader of Dream Team for 2020. Hello, mate.
How are you?
Mate, chasing.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not bad.
You know how many horses have gone past the winning post first on the first lap of the Melbourne Cup and never won it?
Yeah.
So I'm hoping I'm not one of those guys.
Let's hope that's not the case. You've had a really good start to the year. And Dream Team, like all other fantasy footy formats, they've had some pretty substantial changes to what it actually means. Maybe let's talk Dream Team first. While we've got the leaderboard out there at the moment, in terms of Dream Team, there's been some changes, and every format has a different change and a different strategy that goes with it. So let's go format by format. In terms of Dream Team, here's what's just come in for you. Between the rounds of 9 to 12, you're going to be able to make up to 3 trades per week. You've also been given in your format now an additional 4 trades, so that's going to bring your season total up to 28. And during the multi-bye rounds of round 10 and also round 11, it's a best 18 scoring format, and then some potential additional more trades and best 18 rounds once we know what the future fixture does look like. But Rids, from a Dream Team perspective, what's your first line take of what that means for fantasy coaches?
I think at least now we've got some sort of indication on where to plan for the next 4 weeks. But having said that, the thing that I found the most interesting was it looked like in the messaging they said that it's likely we're going to get more trades later. It's going to be best 18 again when extra bye rounds and stuff are found out.
Yeah, well, the only thing that the AFL have kind of basically indicated is that unless you're from the Essendon Football Club or the Melbourne Football Club, you're going to be having a multi-bye round or a week off at some point between now and the end of the season. And we'll talk about those Essendon Melbourne players a little bit later on. But you're right, both SuperCoach and Dream Team have hinted that more trades may come as we see how the AFL try to navigate their way through the fixture.
So as everyone would know, I haven't been as vocal over the last period of time, mainly because of personal and work commitments. But the reality of the situation is I don't think we had enough trades to start with in DT.
Yeah.
So to get to a completed side, it was always going to be a challenge with a starting point of 24 trades in a shorter season. So with the extra 4 trades right now, it means people are likely to go burning trades even more now.
Yeah.
Thinking that there might be trades coming later on. So I just hope they keep a consistent approach now from what they've done, for the first 7 or 8 weeks, and actually make the same calls so people have got an even playing field to move forward and plan. That's all.
Yeah, and that's fair enough. And Kane, we'll talk about SuperCoach in a moment, but certainly from Dream Team, where it has been coaches looking at players like a Tom Duday as an example, where you go, he was probably initial just a cash generation or a stepping stone candidate. Then before these trades hit, we were thinking he might have been a season-long on-field option. But now we also, as Rids has pointed out, find ourselves in that dilemma of we could go really hard and aggressive and still have to look at a player like a Duday in our completed sides, or we might be a little bit more conservative through that. What are some of the approaches you'd be advocating for in Dream Team?
Well, I think one thing, MJ, that you can never go too far away from is value.
Yeah.
If there's inherent value, whether it's, a Bailey Smith this week who seems to have bottomed out, anytime you're going value, it's always going to give you the best chance to build a completed team. And the other factor we've got to look at is best 18. If we go to best 18, like we've seen, for those couple buy rounds that we've got when there's teams on a buy, what's that going to look like going forward? Because obviously the more we go best 18, the more important it is to have those guys that have a massive ceiling, because in all likelihood, you might be able to drop them out of your best 18 if they have a poor score. So it becomes that balance of, is it better to have, 22 guys that are, almost premiums, or do we really want to go all out and get those guys that we think are top liners? So that's where having 4 weeks is great, but how are we going to project forward? Because as we saw, we had one buy round with 4 teams and one buy round with 2. We've got another 10 teams still to be announced. Do they drip feed that 2 teams on a buy for 5 weeks? Do they two blocks of 4? Because, that could have a huge impact on the players you even have available in your side. So, again, like you said, MJ, Essendon and Melbourne, we know they at least don't have a buy. I'm not going to get into who will be rested and who won't, but at least for that point of view, they have a chance of featuring your side for the rest of the year.
There's also one extra thing as well, MJ, is if every team's going to play themselves once, and there's a bye round now, well, that means there's going to be round 18.
Correct.
So there's going to be an extra round added on to the end of the season. So every chance we're going to have 2 or 3 rounds at the end of the season where you're going to have 22 on the field counting.
Yeah.
So you might plan for best 18 and then have to revert back to best 22 on the field, with only 2 or 3 rounds to go. And that could very well determine whether league finals and everything else. So it's a real unknown at the moment.
Yeah, and it impacts so drastically the players you choose to target now from an upgrade. We know 8 teams in terms of where their week-off standards are. We know for Essendon and Melbourne, there won't be one. We know that Carlton will be when they'll be having theirs, along with West Coast, Fremantle and Hawthorn in round 10. So we know where they're going to be off. And then the following week, the Sydney teams of GWS and the Swans. But then as we start to look at upgrades of, do you look to those Western Bulldogs players? Is there that defensive premium we want to bring in, knowing full well that their week off could be in a crucial time when it comes to either your league finals or that final ditch rankings push?
Well, MJ, I think you've got to look at your team for starters. You've got to do a stock take on your specific team and how are you impacted in that first round, starting at round 10. If I pick out my team as an example, I can't take on any more players from that bye round. My backline already has Sicily, Luke Ryan, Sam Doherty.
Yeah, you're full.
So for me, in my trades this week, I can't even look at a Will Day.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to want to move him on. He's just ruled out. Midfields might have, Cripps, Gaff, Tom Mitchell. That's not,
it's not
out
horrid.
of question. Forward line, Michael Walters has been sensational.
Yeah.
Johnny Segler might be still floating around.
Yeah.
Chad Wingard. So you've got to do a stock take of that, because the fact is, outside of Melbourne and Essendon, every other team is going to have a bye.
Yep.
So if you can manage it and you look at your team and you think, I've got no one in that bye round, you might be best off actually taking a player from that round, because okay, that's the bye then, I can plan for it. Whereas if we push it down the road and let's say Bulldogs are paired with Geelong, they're paired with Brisbane and they're paired with Gold Coast, all of a sudden half your midfield could be out with the amount of players that are great in that bye. So maybe there's some coaches that look at their team and go, I am better off bringing in a player like that because they'll have their bye now. Another advantage, MJ, of having the bye when they have it around 10 and 11 is it's actually in the middle of that condensed fixture.
Yeah.
So if the fixture, opens up and goes to 1 game a week, well, the resting for those 4 teams should be less likely because they've had a bye in the middle to break it up. So if your team fits it, it might actually be advantageous to you to take a player like that on, because it's not going to burn you down the road. They've had their bye. You can see who they've got their bye with currently. And in the long run, it might set you up for success.
Yeah,
Go. Hey, MJ, I'm going to have to disappear soon, but
That's
I just want to throw out an interesting dilemma that we might all have. Okay, we're always talking about buy low, sell high.
Yep.
Rightio. Now I'm going to throw Lockie Neal at people.
I was just about to ask him.
Now the Lockie Neal factor's intriguing me. The reality is, I think the Lions have 4 games in about 14, 15 days.
Yeah,
roughly.
really close. Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm going to counter that. He potentially could be the best captain option for rounds 10 and 11 because they play Richmond and Bulldogs, who are notoriously not taggers.
Yeah.
So he may very well be the best captain option. So how do people want to deal with that if you don't have him is really, really intriguing. Like, do you spend the money, pay top dollar for a guy, okay, in that, but he's still got to buy to come later on?
Yeah.
Like, so this is where this is really, really interesting how it all falls out. And a lot of this is going to be about luck when the draw comes out. Who do you have? Who don't you have? As Kane was just saying, grouped together every time a new buy is known. So luck always plays a factor. We know that. But the reality is it's going to play a massive factor this year because we don't know how many trades we're going to have for the season.
Yep.
We don't know who plays who late.
Yep.
Did you really want to play a De Boer in round 18 for a final?
Yeah.
Like, you know, it's very, very intriguing how this works.
Yeah. The great challenge for coaches is, while there is so many unknowns, we talked about on last week's episode with Kane, it's even though there's things you don't, filter it through the known quantities you have and let those, as best they can, give you the information you need to make decisions. We know where 6 teams are having their weeks off. We know Melbourne and Essendon players will not have a week off. And for those in Dream Team and SuperCoach that had premiums back in round 3 that felt a little bit of that sting because they didn't get that cash generation or the points on field, there's an element of a reward for you if you've been able to hold those players like the Petrakas, the Ridleys, the Gawns, the Clayton Olivers, maybe a Dylan Shield of that nature as well, even a Viney, where you're now getting some small compensation because now you've got guys that, outside of injuries or club restings, Rids, I suppose these guys now have some extra value for you.
Yeah, they do. And on top of that, though, it's the guys that may not have started the season well or may have had not a great start. Like, I'm thinking about guys like Christian Salem.
Yeah.
Now, maybe a Devon Smith, if you don't own Devon Smith already in the comps. Like, these are the guys that you might actually start looking at a little bit more because they get an extra game than anyone else between now and the end of the year.
Yeah.
And they're likely to, improve their score and up to that premium range of a defender forward now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good call, isn't it? I know, Rids, we've got to let you go in a minute. Before we move on to SuperCoach and AFL Fantasy, what's the biggest concern you have? Not biggest concern, but the biggest bit of advice you would give for coaches as they look at their final, we know a little bit more about Dream Team now. What's the biggest bit of encouragement advice you could give coaches in that format of the game?
Work out. This is a hard year to stay motivated for, okay?
Yeah.
I know that's easy for me to say because I'm going okay in the rankings, but as you guys know, it is hard to watch at the moment. It's hard to see your teams only scoring 15, 1600.
Yeah.
It's always exciting in fantasy footy to see those big hundreds and to have the captain option on it. I know SuperCoach is pretty much the out there with that, with all of the how
weighting.
they rank.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but just try and work out what you want to achieve between now and the end of the year. It might end up being, look, you started the year focused on the best ranking you can, and you've sort of might not have had the luck that you wanted in the first month or two, and that means you need to change it to become like a league focus. You might want to beat your best mate in a league. In that case, don't be scared to throw around every now and then if you're looking okay as the league. Like if you've won enough games in the league and stuff, but try and find something that will motivate you to keep an interest between now and the end of the year.
Yeah, nice. Good advice, mate. We know we've got to let you go. Thank you for sneaking on, my friend, and hopefully you have a ripping score again this week and keep staying at the top of the tree.
Great idea, MJ, to get me on before I start sliding down those rankings.
That's it, mate. That's it.
Have a good one, guys.
Thanks, mate. We'll chat soon. And there goes the potential winner of Dream Team. No, who knows, Kane? We'll keep talking, man, about... let's talk AFL Fantasy before we move on to SuperCoach. In AFL Fantasy, there are still some unknowns about what's going to happen in that format, isn't there? We don't yet know, will they go to a best 18? It's been implied that they're going to look at some form of more rolling lockout during at least the multi-bye rounds of 10 and 11. But what we do know AFL Fantasy have done, and it's already landed from this week, is our trades per week have been increased up to 3 every single week. Use them or lose them. It opens up some interesting things for us, Kane, and I'm keen on your take specifically on this. You look at guys like Grundy, Neal, Gawn, and Treloar. They are either well over or close enough to 900,000. That is a crazy ton load amount of cash and really hard to outlay that amount of money if you don't have them. But do these additional trades let's use Gawn as the example, does that make him much more of a priority to go and trade in, knowing A, he's going to play every week if he's fit and not being managed, but 2, we've got that extra trade to be able to maximise?
Yeah, I think the double whammy there, MJ, is the extra game.
Yeah.
Like, if we even just talk about, what from this point onwards, just by having an extra game, it pretty much gives you an extra 10 points on your average if they're available throughout that whole period.
Yeah.
Just because they're playing the next game. And there's only 11 games to go for Melbourne and Essendon players and 10 to go for the rest of the competition. So, clearly that's factoring in that, if you don't have them playing, they don't score at all, which obviously I'd hope that most people would have some cover, which would, eat into that slightly. But naturally, just by having an extra game, it's anywhere between a 5 to 10 point boost for their average across the whole year. That's how valuable that extra game is. The tricky thing in AFL Fantasy is obviously price movements and getting the balance of what else can you do. We always talk about what are the other trades you're doing. If getting Max Gawn costs you bringing in a Bailey Smith, bringing in another underpriced premium, what's the difference that you think you're going to make up? Let's just say, MJ, that if you bring in Gawn, you're going to have to field Connor Butterick still, and you're going to have to field Curtis Taylor. Yeah. And maybe as a combination, that gets you, let's just pluck out a number and say it's 200 points.
Yeah, 200.
That's 200 points. Conversely, if you think, okay, if I skip on Gawn, I can field a Taylor anyway, and then a Bailey Smith, and let's just go with, maybe a Lockie Whitfield slips past you as well. So now we're talking, is Bailey Smith and Lockie Whitfield, who I think are right around the mark to being, premium players in that forward line. Yeah. They might not both be top 6, but they wouldn't be far off. Yeah. Can they combine beat that score? Yeah. And I think, honestly, they can. Whether, the pricing and all that sort of stuff, I'm not exactly sure off the top of my head how those, total value works out. But there are plenty of those type of moves. I know Jaden Short was one that a lot of coaches last week, seeing that Basher Hooley was out of the side for an extended period of time, they saw great value in him, and he scored well. And obviously Max is scoring incredibly well as well and presents that captaincy option, which is always vital. And I feel like now, MJ, when we're going to go into a rolling lockout in AFL Fantasy just due to the schedule, clearly that's a massive tick all gone. Because you're going to have that ability whether to use him as a VC loophole or to use him as just a captaincy if your vice captain fails. That is a big tick in his favour. I just know it is so difficult to get to those guys. And to be honest, I don't think Max Gawn can go up another level. Like, I feel like what you're paying for now is what he can do. I don't think he's going to go up another gear again and keep soaring in price. So that's where I feel like if you don't have him, and the other factor we always talk about, MJ, is you're banking in that loss. If you haven't had Gawn, all those Gawn owners before you, you're just locking in that loss that they've just been enjoying a massive stretch. So unless you're in that top handful and you want to be defensive and just get Gawn out of the equation, but I feel like if you're chasing and you're trying to differentiate yourself and move up the ranks, I think you've almost got to look at value. Just keep looking at value. Who's underpriced? What changes have been made? And again, you've got some buy-around information now as well. So use that. Like as I said, have a look at your side, bit of a stock take.
Yeah.
Where am I okay? Where am I bad? Where could be a problem? And I know a lot of that's, projection going forward because we haven't seen these buys. But MJ, if I'm looking at the buys that have been announced, you've got Sydney and GWS paired together.
Yep.
West Coast and Freo paired together.
Yep.
If I'm going out on a limb,
Adelaide and Port together.
I'm going to be confident they're paired together.
Gold Coast
I'm going to be confident that Gold Coast and Brisbane are going to be paired together.
I agree.
Now, the issue then is, are they paired with another two teams? For instance, Carlton and Hawthorn are paired with West Coast and Fremantle.
Yeah.
But if I'm working on that, and again, it is an assumption, and clearly it could not be the case, but if I'm looking at that logic so far and I've seen the two sides from interstate being paired together, I'm going to look at my Brisbane and Gold Coast players.
Together.
How am I tracking?
Yeah.
I'm going to look at my Adelaide and Port Adelaide players. How am I tracking? And just assume those little things that I think are more likely to happen than not, and just see, you know what? I actually can bring in a player from, the bye round in round 10 because I don't have anyone. At least I can clear it, and I know I can handle that lot. I'm not going to be fielding 16 players.
Yeah, that's right. I can clear out a Cumming or a Rivers
exactly.
and go and get a Will Day who, let's be honest, barring injury or being managed, he's established himself inside that Hawthorn back six now.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. I think that's the important thing where you're probably going to get more bang for your buck by doing that.
Yeah.
Finding that pairing, and there is plenty of value. And as I said, I don't think Gawn is value. I think Gawn is a terrific option.
Yeah, no, that's right.
He's an absolutely terrific option. But I think for the structure of most teams that don't have him, as I said, you're better off hoping, and it's not great for Gawn, but if something goes wrong, again, unfortunately last year when he played Brisbane, he rolled the ankle and was stationed forward for the rest of the game and scored incredibly low.
Yeah.
Like, that's what's going to give you, and obviously it's a risk that he keeps going the way he's going. But the thing is, I don't think he becomes more unattainable if you wait. Like, he is already very unattainable.
Well, in AFL Fantasy right now, which is where we're purely having this conversation around Gawn at the moment, 943,000, a break-even of 84. The reason he's being often talked about is people that have owned a Mark Pitternet, who maybe was the transition from a Naismith, or you moved away from, at that time, an underperforming Tim English style. It's nearly 500,000 on the upgrade. Conversely, Brodie Grundy's probably in a lot of people's sides in terms of ownership percentage. Grundy's up at 64%. Gawn's right down towards 21%. But it is almost 120,000 difference between Gawn and Goldstein. Another 180,000 difference to O'Brien. And around about 200,000 difference to a Tim English. In terms of current form, Gawn's killing it, averaging 117. English averaging 98 in the last three. O'Brien averaging 94. So these things all inform us. And Goldie had a quieter week last week. Soldo's doing a decent job slowing down other, scoring premiums. He's averaging 91 after a bad one. But those things we know. But then we also come and look at what the AFL fixture is and the impacts that that's going to have for Gawn the next five. One of the rucks that he's coming up against is a Brodie Grundy. So we know that's going to be a challenging week. One of the things we know this week is Riley O'Brien is coming up against potentially a Draper-Phillips combination. If you want the rest of what the fixture looks like for Gawn, it's Collingwood, North Melbourne, Adelaide, Port and Brisbane. And with the exception of Brisbane, all of those rucks at least compete maybe in a level sphere of one of Gawn's strengths. O'Brien probably matches Gawn around the ground. Goldie probably matches him at the hit-outs to advantage. Collingwood's Grundy, comparable right across the board. And Port Adelaide, well, they've been shown that historically they're more than happy to double team a Max Gawn.
Yeah, I think the interesting part as well, MJ, and this is where it gets really hard for Pitnet owners, is you've obviously copped an awful score. So as much as we try not to be, emotionally, you want him out of the side as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
Like, especially when you saw that Scott Lycett's out.
Yeah.
And you thought, oh, wow, how good is this? He's got Peter Laddams, who's coming in for his first game of the year, and, a very good, solid player. He played great on the weekend.
Yeah.
But in terms of what you thought you were going to face, you'd be licking your lips.
Yeah.
Now the really tricky part is he's got Goldstein this week, and then, who knows, maybe Segler's back, maybe not, but he does have a round 10 bye. So that's where it gets really tricky, and that's where I really feel for owners is if you want to wait it out and think, before this, he was going at 64 points. That's 80 in the old. That's far from disastrous.
Yes.
The problem is with that 30 in his score, you wait 2 weeks for the price to come back. You get hit with the buy.
Yeah, that's right.
So that's why I can see people wanting to jump off. The hard thing is, where do you go for that big spend? And, if you want to go somewhere in between, you are going to have to cop a buy anyway.
Yes.
You're going to be trading. That's the great advantage of Max Gawn now, is that he's buy free. The only option, if you want to go really down swinging, is if Draper gets named for Essendon and you want to take Pitnet all the way down.
Yeah.
And obviously redistribute that cash elsewhere with other premiums. I'm not against that because you're probably going to need to do a downgrade anyway. And with the rookies that I'm seeing come through, which is barely anything, you might be able to have a way where you can restructure that and bring him on. But at this point of recording, we don't know if he is going to be playing.
Yeah.
But that's where I do feel for coaches. And I do understand them just wanting to go, you know what, I'm just going to do whatever it takes, even if it's a premium down.
Yeah.
Just to get the cash to have no headache. You've got no buy for Gawn.
You got the
captaincy
captain
option in a rolling situation.
potentially. Yeah.
And to be honest as well, if you've watched Max Gawn,
He's killing it.
fitness is clearly not a problem. Like in terms of playing multiple games, I've never seen him fitter. The way he's moving around the ground, and that's why his scoring's gone to a whole nother level. He's
Absolutely.
getting from contest to contest, and also he's clunking everything.
Yeah.
So while I don't think it's a great matchup this week, clearly historically Brisbane's very tricky. Also the way Brisbane play, it's not just Steph and Oscar. It's the way they actually play the game.
Yeah.
They don't allow, they're not a massive sort of stoppage type of team. So there's actually not usually massive chances for ruckman. And also when you're playing up north, it's not as easy to clunk those marks in the greasy conditions. So all those factors have really worked against it. But yeah, the question is, MJ, who do you have confidence in? Maybe you want to play the break-even game. Tim English doesn't have a buy round announced yet. You've obviously got a massive score up his sleeve. Maybe your plan is to go, use him as a bridge, as a stepping stone, as we call it, to get somewhere in the vicinity. But I think what it would come back to me is, what's the combination? How confident am I in my rookies? If I've got to pick it the way he's going with that opportunity, I probably would want to try to get up to a Max Gawn, because I think as a pairing, Pickett's just as likely to go anywhere between, it was 80 on the weekend, even if he drops back down to the 50s, two rookies that go 50 and a Max Gawn, 110 with a captain on it, probably does beat those, two, underpriced premiums. But
that's right.
It's bloody tricky, and I don't blame coaches that go either way. I just feel like you can't say there is value in Max Gawn.
No,
like it's just, it's really tricky. If I'm in a position where I'm behind, I think I'm rather going to try to go elsewhere and just hope I get a bit of luck.
Yep.
And the break-even game in AFL Fantasy, at least you can say you did it and you got some cash generation. And if it fails, you can move to a Max Gawn. Maybe when Tim English has his buy, it's in round 13, 14.
That's right.
I think it's so hard, MJ, as you know, to get that cash.
Well, and that's it. Can you justify that additional 200,000 from a Tim English, or the extra 150 odd thousand from a Goldstein or O'Brien? Can you justify that is the best investment you can make onto a Gawn,
the other thing as
onto
well,
another?
In AFL Fantasy, typically a rule of thumb that's holds true for the way the prices move is, for every 70,000 you spend, it should be 10 points.
Yeah.
So if you say there's 200,000, let's just say it's 210 to keep it simple. Does Tim English get within 30 points of Max Gawn every week?
On current form, yes. More than. He's within 10 to 15.
So that's the sort of thing you've got to obviously factor in. Clearly as well at time of recording, it hasn't really been. Cal Porter's been named to play tonight for the Dogs, which is great news for Cal. But in terms of rookies coming through, how much confidence do you have? Do you have to take a rookie on this week? Do you have to just... The hard thing I'm seeing with a lot of these max scoring trades, MJ, is people need to go down to 170 players.
Yeah.
And the risk with that is, and this is why I do caveat at that, is if you're bringing in, let's say you are bringing in Cal Porter.
Yeah.
And he's a 1 week problem, or he's a 1 week player. Now all of a sudden we're going into a bye round. Cal Porter's Bulldogs aren't on the bye,
and he's
Cal's
nothing.
Not playing,
and he's not worth anything too. Yeah.
And that's the issue, and that's where going the value. You have a player that typically has job security at least.
Yeah.
So instead of worrying about, okay, I've got Gawn and 2 rookies that may or may not play.
Yeah.
Now you've gone, well, at least I've got 3 players that are in the best 10 in their side. I got them under price, so they've got some upside in terms of, not that you're worried too much about generating cash, but their scoring will go up based on what you paid. So I think you've just got to be really confident in the rookie you're bringing in. I'd be cautioning people going, I need to go 2 rookies down to 170k players. I'm going to guess the best ones I think that will get a game.
Yeah.
And now I've got Gawn. I just feel like going forward, we've already seen one bye round with 4 teams out.
Correct.
Again, the flip side in AFL Fantasy is at time of recording, we don't know if they're going to take averages.
Yes.
If they're going to take averages, well...
Different story. Are they doing best 18? Different story. Like, everything changes, and that's the unknown. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing, MJ, where, you might get let's just use Egmalise Smith, who's got a great score in his average. If there's a player like that who pops game one, even if they're 350, 400k, maybe a Sam Mays sort of type.
Yeah.
And he's got his bye. Well, of course you're going to bring him in because you're going to take a mid-60 score. And that's the thing where it's incredible, MJ, isn't it? In the span of a couple of weeks, all of the formats have gone different directions, and all these strategies have become, they're already different for these games.
Yeah.
Now they're super, super different based on the way they've handled it. And obviously they do have to handle it all differently.
Yeah, absolutely. Once we've got more knowns, it informs your decisions. But, for me, like I'm currently a non-Max Gawn owner, but what I'm seeing a lot of people do that are out of the Max Gawn equation is taking the Starcevic, the Buderiks type, going all the way down and then turning your Pitternet type of player up. It just gets me very, very nervous that you're going to set your side up in future weeks with minimal cash generation. Like you might have the McInerney's, the Rivers, the Cummings, the Kavaras, the Sturts all on your bench, and all you're doing potentially is just pushing a problem down the river to deal with. And we talked about that a few weeks, about dealing with the knowns now, not getting rid of those problems. And we'll talk about Fife and Segler in a moment from a SuperCoach perspective. However, as you've said, if we get awarded average scores and a best 22 maintains in AFL Fantasy, then all of a sudden it's not as much of a problem because a Sturt or a Cummings kind of score and a Rivers and a McInerney, you can throw that on the field knowing that they're banked points, even if they're not going to get a game.
Yeah, that's the other thing. How are they defining as well, MJ? We saw in the past it had to be named in the side.
Yeah.
So did they have to be named in the previous week's side? Like,
correct.
Imagine how brutal it would be if Nat Fife obviously doesn't get up until that, maybe his goal is to get back in round 11 after his bye. And they say, oh, but he wasn't named in the round 19.
Yeah.
So you don't get his score. Like, that's where I feel like it becomes such a headache because, do you deserve to get someone's score if they're out for the season?
Yeah.
Like, I really feel for them trying to work out all these machinations because imagine if someone's got a Jeremy Howe.
Yeah.
And they say, oh, his average is, I can't recall off the top of my head, let's say it's 75.
Well, let's pick a Luke Dunstan. He's got an average of 100 sitting there. Do you go and trade him in for the week and grab a sneaky hundo?
So I really feel for them about how they define.
It's a tough one.
If they come out and say, it's these players because they played last week, that's probably the fairest way.
Yes.
But as I said, a coach might be saying, yeah, but I've got Nat Fife and he's meant to be back this week if there was a game.
Yeah.
So I really, again, like anything, MJ, you just got to be across the information. What's the rules? And again, we're all playing by the same rules. So, again, I would not want to be in that position trying to decide this player gets it, that player doesn't. And obviously for AF, we're only bringing it up because they did award averages earlier in the season. We know SuperCoach and DreamTeam
went to the best 18,
Went to the best 18 and coaches with Melbourne and Essendon players, it was tough luck. And, maybe this balances out now that they don't have a bye.
Yeah.
So in the long run, maybe it is okay. It might have worked out better, but as I said, they've made decisions in the past. I can tell already by SuperCoach and DreamTeam, they've sort of stuck fat with that route. Awarding trades is always great just to, keep people engaged and help us handle, we don't know how many players are going to get rested. So I think never more than ever has news being super important.
Yeah. Well, let's certainly hope for AFL fantasy coaches that what would be ideal for us all, and again, at time of recording, it might have even dropped by the time this episode goes live, that they've announced how they're going to handle those other elements of the game. But that kind of information really does crucially inform the kind of trades you make this week. Does that mean you go and get the Gawn or does it not? Does it mean you play the value game and get an English and turn your Buderick up to a Bailey Smith before lockout hits this week? Those are the big questions that coaches are going to really have to grapple quickly with once that bit of information does come out. From a SuperCoach perspective, though, like in DreamTeam, they've resulted that they're going to go to a best 18 during the multi-buy rounds that we know about. And they've also awarded 4 additional trades into your team right now. So that means you're jumping up strongly from 30 to 34 trades. And between round 9 to 12, like in DreamTeam, you're going to be able to use a maximum of 3 trades per week. In that format, Kane, it was close enough already to AFL fantasy style of trading, which is 2 trades a week, and you're away. Now with 4 trades, that maintains. Does coaches that have been aggressive get the reward here, where they've already been doing the double trade a week and it's going to maintain? Or have those that have maybe been a little bit more conservative and held off on 1 or 2 where they don't need to, does the ability now to get really super aggressive during that known 4-week window, do they get that little bit of an advantage?
Oh, MJ, it's a really tricky one. Again, I think it's a great decision to have the option of 3 a week. And I feel like what's important is while there's best 18, as we mentioned in round 10 and 11, it's still a condensed fixture over round 9 and 12 as well.
Correct.
So I think the great thing that allows is if there is, restings on a large scale, which we just don't know, at least you do have an option to cover a donut at all costs, if you really want to. If you really want to structure your team. Who does it advantage? Well, to be honest, I think it's still more about structure. Like there's still potentially 11 rounds to go. The hard thing is, and this is what we were mulling over so much last week, and in the end, I think we sort of leaned towards you have to double down because we didn't see any cows last week that were making their debut that we had a lot of confidence in. So Simpson and Rankin was a really popular move in SuperCoach last week.
Yeah, Day was the other. Yeah.
And the coaches that pulled the trigger and thought, you know what, I'm going to get aggressive. I'm going to pass on Simpson and I'm going to take Bailey Smith.
Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, and this is, can go 1 or 2 ways. And unfortunately for those coaches, Simpson outscored Bailey Smith.
Yeah.
Simpson skyrocketed in price.
Yeah.
Bailey Smith dropped.
Yep.
And now you're looking at it going, well, I want to pay, nearly $200K for Simpson.
Yeah.
I turned him down at 123.
Yeah. Why am I saying
but
yes now?
But I've already got Smith.
Yeah.
And as we keep saying, at time of recording, there's no real cows outside of Cal Porter that are coming through.
No.
So this is where MJ, and this is what's been mulling over in my head, is that there are some options, albeit at an elevated price tag, that could fill this cash cow role. Because if we don't have cows coming in to drop to, we're either having to trade in players that aren't playing, which makes it really challenging to keep fielding, at least 18 players. And we know we still have to field 22 in round 9 and 12. So that's where Egmale Smith, Sam Mays, Will Day, McPherson, even Simpson if you missed him, and even Rankin if you missed him as well.
Yeah, it's still not
all
too
of a
far.
sudden you start thinking, I know it's more than I paid, but I don't see anyone really coming through. And I know a lot of coaches are sort of banking on with heavy rotation. We'll get some players coming in.
Sure.
But the risk with that is, they might come in for a week
or 2.
But are they going to come in or 2? But are they going to come in for the week that you want them?
Yeah.
Your best bet with that sort of stuff is trade for the rookie that's playing the 1 week you need them and do it the week they're named.
Yeah.
Trying to predict it now
It's so hard.
Super difficult. So if we look at last week, the coaches that doubled down are feeling great because there's no cows to choose from this week.
No.
And they've got heaps of cash. Whereas the ones that went, I'll take the premium this week and do another one up, one down. I'm struggling to see who you're going down to.
Yeah.
You might have to go sideways. You
That's
might
right.
have to go Brandon to Egmalise Smith. And I think if we're talking eye tests, MJ, he passed the eye test about as well as anyone's passed the eye test. I know it was North Melbourne and Richmond absolutely dominated, but you might have to look at him and say, yeah, he's 100K more. But he scored a 119 in SuperCoach and probably has 100K to make quite comfortably.
In the next 2 weeks,
You've got confidence in, Basher's not back with the team, so that already buys him 2 weeks.
Minimum.
Basher left today to quarantine, so I'd expect it to be more. And there's no one really else that's going to come into that side to fill his role. The players that are coming back, it's more your Cochin types, and they already lost Caddy.
Yeah.
It's a testament to Richmond's depth that they can just keep plugging these guys in and they keep playing so well. So my mind thinks, I am someone who does have cash to spend, but am I better off getting an Egmalise Smith while he's at 240, knowing that he'll go up, and then next week I can do an upgrade? Because if I pass on him, MJ, and there's no cows again, now
with
I'm
security.
looking at him. Now I'm looking at him at 300K.
Yeah.
And obviously this is always the risk, but if the premium I bring in instead of Egmalise Smith doesn't outscore him by 30 to 40 points, it's probably a loss.
Yeah.
And that was the hard thing about taking on the double downgrade.
Yeah.
Everyone took on the double downgrade, whether it was, if anyone who did take it on, I should say, Rankin and Simpson combined for 180 points combined.
In SuperCoach.
So unless your premium was Dangerfield and Hugh Greenwood or James Sicily,
Max Gawn or Petrarca or these kinds,
you're probably not feeling great about it this week.
No.
Because, as I said, there is so little cow. And, again, especially with the scoring potential of an Egmalise Smith, and maybe you have to bite the bullet. So that's where, while we've got this surplus of cash, if it's not going to help us in the long run build a better team, again, you can't feel good about MJ about trading in players that won't play.
And again, like you said,
so risky.
It's so risky, and the luck element, so to speak, just didn't go your way. And if you look at teams and fixtures and who's going to likely give these younger players ongoing opportunities, yes, teams over these condensed weeks are going to try to expose as much of their squads as needed to be able to navigate their way through. But really at the moment, there's a clear bottom 4 teams in the AFL, all with developing future talent as their primary focus. Adelaide, North Melbourne, Sydney and Fremantle. If we were to try to forecast as best we could who might get some consistent games, from a cash cow nature from these teams, an Adelaide perspective, it's probably a Schoenberg that's the closest as a mid, and he's not basement price through there, but he's probably the one. From a Fremantle.
Maybe Lockie Scholl.
Yeah, Scholl off the back line.
But the other thing is, MJ, we've spoken about before, half of Adelaide's team is under 50 games already.
Under 30 games.
Yeah. But yet, if we really dive into it, half of them are even under 15.
Yeah.
So, again, you can't it's not as simple as just throwing them all out there at once. You
Correct.
still need some
experience,
proven players to go alongside. And then on the flip side, MJ, you might not have any guarantee that when you want them,
they'll play
in round 10.
Yeah.
They'll be there to cover for your Sicilies, your Dohertys. So that's why it's crossed my mind that while most coaches, especially in SuperCoach, are cashed up, we're talking 300, 400, some coaches even 500K.
Yeah.
If Egmalise Smith comes out with an 80 and Bailey Smith comes out with 100, I know who's won that trade.
Correct.
Because in next week, Bailey Smith might go up 15K, 20K, and you can still bring him in
comfortably.
You're not going to bring in, or it's going to be very difficult for you if you passed on Egmalise Smith at 240 to go, I'll grab him at 300. And that's where I just worry that maybe we do have to settle and say that, an Egmalise Smith, I'll take 100K.
Yeah.
And he's already made 100K in price because, as I said, it's all well and good to have, the McInerney's, the Taylors on your field. But if you don't have confidence in going down to someone, and I just see that there's just a shortage of those sort of players, maybe we need to accept that And Egmale Smith is a guy that we just hang on to.
Yeah.
Again, the way he's playing, he looks sensational, and it's just such a tricky balance. And as I keep looking through these players, I just don't, no one's really screaming that's a player, because at the end of the day, MJ, we're in late July.
Yeah.
So we had that massive break for players to get up to speed. Isaac Rankin was one that clearly took that opportunity to get fit. He's challenged by the club, and he's in the team. Like Will Gould at Sydney, I think, is the one because of the preseason hype and how hyped he was as a draftee. But at the same time, how many more injuries can Sydney take if he's not getting an opportunity?
Correct.
And if you look at the team, Lloyd, Mills, Rampy, that's
Dawson,
Harry Cunningham, all in the back line. That's the part of the ground they're doing okay. It's the forward line without Buddy. Reed might be back. The midfield's been decimated with no JPK.
No
Heaney's out as well.
Yeah.
Like, unless they start really just swinging things around, the role that Will Gould plays is a role that Sydney's actually best stocked in.
Yeah.
So to think that there's going to be big names that come in and play every game, I think it's unlikely. So, that's where we're going to have to get really creative. And MJ, I wouldn't be surprised if there's extra trades if we see coaches moving players. For instance, maybe people have to get aggressive and go a premium down to a cheaper premium. Let's say Tom Stewart in 2 weeks is $400K.
Yeah.
And James Sicily's $550 on his buy. People might go, that's $100K, $150K right there to drop Sicily to Stewart.
Yeah.
Like, again, that's the type of stuff that people might have to deal with if we have no cows coming through that are actually, in that side.
Yeah, it's some good advice. And then you think about players, now that we know the additional trades we've got, now that we know enough of the fixture, players that had held on to a Nat Fyfe, maybe a Jonathan Segler. And look, there's a chance Segs gets named today. There is a chance of it. And again, at time of recording, we don't know. As you're listening to this, you might know the answers that we currently do not. What we do know is Fyfe will not play this week. And we do know that in round 10, he will not play because he's on the bye round. Meaning, it is round 9, and that is it. So of the next 3 weeks, you are getting one maximum week of Nat Fyfe. That's $630,000 that he is worth. You now have more trades than you did 4 days ago. I don't see a world where you prioritize holding on to him, where at least last week you had that. You had that option of, I've got the Simpson, I've got the Pickett's, I've got the Andersons, I'll put them on the field, and then I'll make the call of whether I should trade Fyfe in or out. I think with the data we now have in front of us, I think if you're a Nat Fyfe owner in SuperCoach, and there's a fair few of you, 21%, break even of 225, even for him, that's probably out of range. I don't think you can hold him.
Yeah, I think it's super tough, and it's tough because, like you mentioned, there's a buy in round 10.
Yeah.
So if I'm a Fremantle, medical stuff that's obviously already gone through the ringer in the media for the mismanagement of Fyfe, which whether you think it was mismanagement or just misfortune.
Yeah.
I'm looking at that round 11 as let's get him back then.
Yeah. Get a cherry
one
right,
advantage
captain.
you do have is that they play Geelong on Monday night.
Yeah.
So pretty much every player in your side, you can have a look at and see how they score. The other advantage is they play Collingwood the following week, last game of the round.
Yeah.
So potentially, if you really want to push it,
you can do it.
You can loophole the rookie, and maybe you get lucky again and Pickett delivers you a 105.
Yep.
And maybe that's an option that you can look at, MJ. Is you can have a look at your rookie scores that you can. If they struggle, have someone that's playing, maybe the 2 games before Nat Fyfe to know if he doesn't score well, I've got to trade up my sleeve and I'm trading Nat Fyfe to the premium that I want. Maybe you can push it like that and carry him all the way through.
Yeah.
But the likelihood with the rookie scores we're getting is you'll probably get a 30 or 40. Unless you've just got players that are absolute dead weight. But even, MJ, Brander's, back up and about.
Yeah.
Really get back into the West Coast team, maybe not, but he's got a low break even. McInerney the same. So it's hard to want to trade those guys if you think they're a game away and there's another 30 to 50K to be made. The advantage you will have next week is you've got 3 trades.
Yeah.
So for instance, if you really wanted to cash yourself up and you just think, I love what Egmaliz Smith's doing, he'll make, 150K the way he's going and he's a really adequate guy to have on field, you can turn that 5 into him and get another premium. And then next week, you've got 3 upgrades and you've let McInerney and Brando, if they get a game, appreciate that one more week. So that's where you've really got to look into that balance. And with 3 trades, you can obviously do all sorts of stuff. I think the hard thing is Segler, though, MJ.
Yeah.
He's had, at least with Nat Fyfe, we know when he's on the field and he's healthy,
he's a big boy.
He's an absolute monster. The hard thing with Segler is, if we look at that 3-week block, 2 games and a bye.
Yeah.
The other flip side is he's got a massive break even of 151 coming off, a broken bone in his foot, albeit apparently small.
Sure.
But the issue is, if we want to ride him out, we have to be willing to ride him out
for a month,
through the bye round and beyond.
Yeah.
And when I'm looking at what his price is currently, it's 2K less than you started him for at the start of the season.
Yeah, you've not moved anywhere.
So, with those 2 scores, a 53 and a 43 in his last 2 weeks, MJ, against Swans is a solid matchup if he does get named. But we're talking probably a drop of, another 60 to 70K in the next 2 weeks and then a bye.
Yeah.
So to me, it feels like a real point in time where this week's a great time to jump because there's still some value there.
Correct.
Otherwise, and this is a risk with a big man injury like that, you wait 1 more week and then he's out.
Yeah.
Now you've dropped 40K.
Yeah.
So for me, as annoying as it is to trade a premium, there's still a lot of value there. I feel like I'd rather move him on and give Brando or McInerney another week to see if they get a game because I know there's obvious cash. The thing is, it's his scoring, MJ. Before that, he had some great scores. He was going at 95 through the first 4 rounds.
Yeah, and knowing why he's, 3 weeks in a row now, Hawthorn have lost a tall forward inside the first quarter.
Yeah, but I just feel like at that price and with the cash that people have, it's very easy to turn him and a rookie into 2 elite scorers.
Yeah.
And I just don't know if teams will be wanting to ride him out for 6 weeks. That's really, really hard, MJ.
Especially when you've got the option to move him really quickly to a Bailey Smith, or if you've got a Brander or a Lukosius type in your back line, you can go and get your Egmaliz Smith or a Will Day very, very easily. So those will be the dilemmas. Yes, you're losing that potential coverage for your rucks with that ruck forward potential, but
the good thing with MJ with that is that Gawn's going to be available.
Yeah.
So
he'll play.
It's probably not as likely unless the people that are paired with Collingwood are absolutely, a lot of other teams. It really hurts you, but it just feels like it's a point where you've still got value. The thing we spoke about with Viney is Viney just had 1 bad score, and that's why we were so strong on saying just hold him. He was already. We didn't know at the time that he was buy free, but we knew he had an extra game up his sleeve.
Yeah,
and he's returned to scores. The issue with Segler is 2 bad scores. An injury that's a broken foot for a big man, like it's probably fair to say that he was dealing with it the past few weeks, and that's why his scoring fell off a cliff. So I just feel like now's a good time where you've still got value in him because in a week or 2, he's at the point where you actually can't do anything with him. You
have to ride it out. Yeah.
And if you really want a big man injury, it just feels like, as we keep saying, you don't want to push problems down the road and move on a McInerney, him to come back in, and you've traded him out and Segler's now not playing.
Yeah.
So I feel like that is one of the times where that's a good jump from a mid-pricer. Get him out of the way. He still gives you some value. Again, you're making money crazily, MJ, going to Bailey Smith. And in terms of points on field, I'm pretty confident you're probably getting very worst 10-point boost, which is, 100 points across the season. Honestly, could even go up to 250 the way Bailey Smith's playing outside of that concussion. But yeah, MJ, the main concern for me is, as I said, I just don't see these cows coming through.
Yeah, no.
And that's where I feel like Bailey Smith is so important for coaches is at that price.
How can you say no?
Absolute dirt cheap.
Yeah, you can't say no.
I think Clayton Oliver's a great pick.
Yeah.
And I think with the buy, it's a massive advantage. The issue, though, is you're paying 160K more than Bailey Smith.
Correct.
For Clayton Oliver, as good as he is, by free.
Yeah.
Can you maybe wait 2 weeks and maybe does Oliver, with a matchup of Brisbane and Port, come back a little bit more attainable, because that's no small amount of money when we're talking about a Mitch Duncan being 420, 430. We're talking about a Luke Shuey being in the mid-4s, a Gas off a bye.
Yeah.
Like, as much as I love Clayton Oliver and he's got that advantage of buy free, when you're paying for players in that price and there's very good options cheaper, even a Tom Stewart, if people have Dan Houston, it's easy to swing Dan Houston into the midfield and grab Tom Stewart at 400k. So, and that goes for Gawn as well, MJ.
Totally.
I know Gawn is not value in SuperCoach in terms of, will he appreciate this week? Maybe. He's 120 break even, right in his.
Yeah, in theory he'll go up. Yeah.
But the others, and that's what we mentioned a few weeks ago when we said when Rao went down, that was the perfect time to get rid of Rao to a rookie and take a pit net up, because it's so hard to generate that cash.
Yeah.
And again, are you going to be confident investing, 300 plus K on a pit net for a Gawn with not many cows to go through? And like I said, if you've already gone without Gawn and you're one of those coaches trying to catch up, as much as I know it hurts, it's just one of those things. You are banking in that loss and paying a lot of cash
to get it
to do so. So, if we get some cows, maybe it makes life a lot easier. But
totally.
I think those third trades might be more used to move a premium to a value premium and generate cash
creative
that way.
Yeah. See, if I had Segler and Fife this week in SuperCoach, the move, if I had the opportunity, these would be what I would do. I'd go get a Bailey Smith over a Petrarca. I'd do a Fife down. And if I could, I'd use some DPP to get an Egmalise Smith via the other. Knowing that would probably give you, if you've already done the double down the week before, a lot of cash. And yes, that's not cash that's been activated just yet.
But MJ, that's the thing we said last week, though, and that's why we caution people.
Yeah.
If the cow is good enough,
it won't matter.
It doesn't matter. As I said, people thought, I'm going to take on Simpson here because he doesn't have great job security or scoring.
Yeah.
And he outscored Bailey Smith.
Yeah,
and now the people with him have made 70k already.
Yep.
He's going up through the roof. There's more cats injuries, which is advantageous.
Yeah.
And you're a point down, and you've paid 20k more for Bailey Smith.
Correct.
So that's why, if the cow is close enough, and that's the hard thing I think with Egmalise Smith, is working out.
Is he that?
What's the number?
Yeah.
Is it 75? Is it 80? Because if it's 80, and you think he can score 80, and Bailey Smith can go 100, for that price difference, and maybe Bailey Smith's not the player. Maybe you've already got Bailey Smith and you're weighing up
Petrarca.
An Egmalise Smith versus Petrarca or Greenwood.
Yeah.
We're talking, MJ, in 2 weeks, Egmalise Smith could be within 50k of Tom Stewart.
And it's sideways.
If you want to get real crazy, you could nearly spend 30 to 50k, get a Shannon Hearn off a buy for Egmalise Smith.
Yep.
That's the type of stuff we're talking about. And hey, at worst, best 18, maybe he drifts off to your D7 and he covers. Again, I didn't grab him, but coaches that grabbed Tom Duday at the price they grabbed him, they've got no rush to move him on.
No.
And as I said, it might involve, hey, Tom Stewart's too good value. Dan Houston, you're my midfielder. Tom Stewart comes on to the defence. It feels like this year, MJ, we're not just locked into, I've got to have midfielders in the midfield. When I'm getting the value of Bailey Smith, I don't care if I've already completed my forward line.
No, it doesn't matter.
If I've got 6 forwards already, I don't care if I have to play Bailey Smith in the midfield, because at that value, there might be an injury down the track where I've got a completed forward line. Oh, Whitfield's out for the season. Swing Bailey Smith forward. Then I can explore.
Yes.
I would just caution people that it's okay. If you've got a completed back line and you've got the flexibility to move, Houston's a great example because he's one of the few guys that has DPP.
Yep.
And you go, geez, I just love what Egmalise Smith's doing. Move Houston into the midfield for a McInerney, or use some DPP and bring him onto the field.
Yeah.
Again, I just feel like we just have to acknowledge value, and that's where it becomes really hard for me to want to pay
big money.
Big money, 550, 560, 600, when I know that if I'm patient in 2 weeks, I've got Tom Stewart, I've got Mitch Duncan,
I've got Patrick Cripps, I've got all these guys.
Tommy Mitchell even. after a poor score against the
Jai
D's.
Simpkin back from injury. Yeah.
So there's all these sorts of things where I think, maybe the Melbourne and Essendon players are the exception to the rule because they have value by the games played. Like, even if we just do MJ a basic, trade on them.
Yeah.
Like, if you've got 10 games of, let's just say, Clayton Oliver at 110.
Yeah.
And another player has 9 games.
At
then
115.
to score the same, they have to go 120 to actually replicate what Clayton Oliver's doing. But the other point remains, the more you wait on them, the more valuable they become. Because if you wait to round 10 to trade in Oliver, now he's got 9 games and they've got 8.
Yeah.
So that advantage, you don't have to bring in the Melbourne and Essendon players this week. That's my point.
I don't think so.
You can still enjoy the value of a Bailey Smith. And again, have a look at a Shannon Hearn now that he's back at home. A Gaff. I just feel like we have to look at the structure of our team and we can't ignore value because we just don't have stack of cows to keep this one up, one down cadence that I know people always talk about. But in theory, there are some weeks where you have to break the rule. We broke the rule last week. A lot of people doubled down, and those cows have been great. So I just don't think because we've got a surplus of cash that you just think, I've got 500K, I've got to spend it.
You don't.
No problem taking an Egmley Smith. If you loved what Sam Mays did,
go for it.
Take Sam Mays. Because guess what? That cash isn't going anywhere. You can still spend it the next week.
Yeah.
So I think, again, as we said, one up, one down wasn't the only option last week. I don't think 2 up is the only option for coaches this week.
Yeah.
Because I still think there's some value and guys that can score well enough to get you by. And I think, Egmley Smith fits that mould, especially with all the other factors, going into it, why he is scoring well.
Yeah, that's right. Well, we look at, and again, that opportunity for coaches in rounds 9 through to 12, where you can do those 3 trades a week. So, you might end up at the end of this round banking it with 500,000 cash sitting in your SuperCoach kitty right now. That's a lot of cash. But you're getting out of that round 10 and you're eyeing off Hearn, Gaff, Yo, Sicily, Cripps, all presenting value for us. And all of a sudden, your injection of moving on your Kings, your Taylors, your Buddericks, potentially through there, then it's your McInerney's. All of a sudden turning those players in that crucial best 18 week with an injection of 3 premiums, you've maxed your scoring potential as well. Oh, boy.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's why I keep stressing it. You can't turn down value in these games, especially when we've got, as I keep saying, limited cows coming through, because last week, coaches that did 1 up, 1 down thought they were getting a points advantage on the field.
And not really.
And, depending who they picked, as I said, if they picked Bailey Smith, Sam Simpson outscored him.
Yeah.
So now you've lost points and cash.
Yeah.
And that's why I think if you don't love the premium you're bringing in, if you just think you're going to spend the cash to spend the cash, I'm just saying, have a look at some of these cheaper options, especially ones that, have a great score in their average. And that's what we said about Simpson and Rankin last week.
Yeah.
I'm not super worried about job security if there's a 100+ score to kick off their cash generation.
No.
Egmley Smith, if he plays 2 games and just does okay, we're talking 80 to 90K, plus he's already at 260. So you drop him down to a rookie and there's some cash coming back. The hard thing with going rookies that are more expensive is you don't have the cash in your bank to spend straight away.
Yeah.
So what I mean by that is if you take Brander down to a rookie that's 100K cheaper, you've got 100K in the bank to spend. If you do that with Egmley Smith, you've probably got, barely anything.
Yeah.
You get where you recoup the value is when you move them on. If they both make 100K and you move them on, you both have the same amount of money because Egmley Smith's money was just in his price at the premium. So that's my point. If you're not going to spend it or you don't think 100K will make a big difference to what your plans are in the next couple of weeks, again, I just think for the scoring that you're going to get, you just can't overlook these guys because of the price they're at and because you have 400K to spend. I just think we have to still keep looking at what is value.
Yeah, and again, you don't get stuck on the break-evens too. If you're in SuperCoach and you're looking at the break-evens of an Egmley Smith, you're going, minus 37. Well, for 100K less, I can get an Andrew McPherson at a minus 34 and save that 100K. And maybe that will help. But it's not just about the break-even, is it, Kane, in SuperCoach? It's also about the scoring.
Well, that's the thing, and that's the factor. Is if you're bringing Egmalice Smith, you're bringing him on to be on the field.
Yeah.
With McPherson, he can fill a role where he's your
You
cover.
get the 50-60 colour.
And that's the thing. And that's obviously, and that's where this game is awfully tricky and awfully fun at the same time, is you're rolling that dice. People rolled it last week and said Simpson will come back to the pack, he'll have a poor score, and he'll be out of the team. So the flip side is he might just score as well as your premium.
Yeah.
And now that coach has another 70K in the bank on you, and you've got nowhere to go to downgrade. So I just feel like obviously, as I said, last week, double down was the theme, and some coaches took it on. This week, as a result, double upgrade's the theme. But I'm just saying there is some great value that you can still get. You don't have to go blowing all your money just because you've got it to spend. You know what I mean? Like, it'll still be around next week. And as I said, there's some guys. Mitch Duncan's expected to be back. Tom Stewart. And we've got buys to work with as well. And we know in previous years, MJ, the strategy is you want to have some money in the kitty. So when that buy does come around,
you can get aggressive.
Players that had the buy, you can get aggressive. So there's an opportunity this week. There's guys that are, I think, at the price, have at least 100K to make. And if you saw the way they scored on the weekend,
could be more.
They're awfully, adequate on the field. It's just a consideration. I'm not saying that, maybe teams will drop and I'll realise for my team, double up's the way to go.
Correct.
There's a couple of rookies that are coming through, but I just don't want coaches to think, I've got 500K,
I have to spend
it all.
Yeah.
Because there is no guarantees in this game. You would have thought, my premium will smash Sam Simpson. I'll make 50 points on the field. And maybe it did if you picked Hugh Green, as I said. Maybe it did if you picked Sicily. But hey, maybe you lost 25 points if you picked Jai Simpkin. Like, that's the really tricky part of this game, and that's why value always helps, whether it's a rookie price player, a premium, because in the long run, 100K times 4 or 5 opportunities, and you're 2 premiums ahead of the pack.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really in-depth way of thinking about the game, and it's one of the things we love about what you bring and other members of the coaches panel too, Kane, is that processing through of the logic and the reasoning and helping us not just make a gut-based response or a follow-the-crowd-based response, but give you the tools as a fantasy footy coach, no matter the format you play, to think through the detailing in the process and to look at all the angles that ultimately will inform your specific team and the unique variables of the 30 players in your squad, what you should be doing. And I think that's a really nice thought, man. Appreciate that. And thanks for joining us on this episode, man.
No worries, MJ. Thanks for having me. It's always great to chat, and hopefully, we can give some voice to some people that might be a bit confused, because to be honest, MJ, there's that much information changing fixtures.
Every day.
I don't blame anyone who's confused, and hopefully we can help out a little bit and keep everyone enjoying the game. That's the main thing. Absolutely right. Hey, well done to every single one of the formats in terms of trying to navigate their way through this year as best they can. While all the changes that have come through the year may not have been exactly what everybody would want or you would personally want, that's okay. You're allowed and entitled to have your opinion. But here's what, from the coaches panel for the makers of AFL Fantasy, SuperCoach, DreamTeam and Ultimate Footy, from the entire fantasy footy community, we're just grateful for you that you would take the time to enable these games to continue on. For some, 2020 has been horrifically challenging for a variety of different reasons. And to have this outlet, to have this thing that gives some sense of normality to what's been a really unusual year, just helps people get through the year. And so even if you don't entirely agree with all the changes and trades and formats and everything, we appreciate that. But certainly from us here at the Coaches Panel, our gratitude to you as the format makers and stalwarts and faces for enabling these formats to continue on, and for the things we all love about the game, for at least to have that rage trade moment on a Sunday night, for us to have that excitement as we head through a Saturday afternoon with that captain going well. It's one of the things that's helping a lot of people get through 2020. From us here at the Coaches Panel, we hope this week goes incredibly your way. We hope your rookies fire, your premiums sing, you nail the rookie roulette, that your captain kills it, and that you just have the best scoring week you've ever had. Keep checking in with coachespanel.tv. Plenty of articles landing right throughout the week. A massive thank you to all of our Patreons for your support. If you want to join that army and get exclusive content, all the links are also at coachespanel.tv. Keep in touch with us over social media, but until next week, where there will be more podcasts than ever before. Oh, did I just let a cat out of the bag?